we now live to YouTube or are we going live to YouTube? We're being live streamed now, everybody.
We are now.
We are now.
We're 2 minutes to Shaw broadcast. 1 minute to Shaw broadcast.
So it looks like from my perspective, I'm only missing Gardy and Shoemaker.
That's what I have as well.
Thank you.
Fifteen seconds to Shaw broadcast. And we are live on Shaw.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I just want to welcome everybody to our August meeting. Before we get going, I wanted to take the opportunity to communicate two messages to the community. And the first message I want to communicate is with respect to vaccinations and vaccines. We're doing pretty well in the Algoma district, and our vaccination rate is healthy. But the reality is that we want to see it improve. And we want to see more people in the Algoma region, particularly in Sault Ste. Marie, receive their vaccine. We have kids starting school again in September. A large number of those children who will be attending school cannot be vaccinated. So they'll be, in classrooms, they'll be in close quarters, they'll be in congregate settings. And one of the ways that we can help keep our kids safe is by getting the vaccinations ourselves. So for all of you who have got it, your first and second dose, thank you. For those of you who have not, as a matter of convenience, we have a number of doses. They're very easy to get. We have significant pop-up clinics, walk-in clinics, and you can really get your vaccine without much effort or challenge. And for those of you that are concerned about it or have some hesitancy, I respect that, but I would encourage you to learn about it, to solicit expert advice on it, to solicit medical advice on it, to not get your advice, your information from social media, but get it from people that study this and know what they are doing and what they are talking about, and consider it, because the more of us that get vaccinated, the safer that we keep ourselves, our family, our friends, and our community at large. So I'd encourage you to consider that and move forward with it. The other point I wanted to make and comment I want to take before we start our meeting is the community is largely aware that we welcomed just under 100 guests from North Spirit Lake First Nation. And those guests have all returned home back to their First Nation. And I had the privilege of meeting a number of people that came here from North Spirit Lake. I went up to the water tower where they were staying a few different occasions. And on the last occasion, I walked in just to check on the folks before they were leaving the next day. And one of the elders recognized me from my previous visits and pulled me aside. And in the 7 years that I've been the mayor of a community, the conversation I had with him was one of the most special I had, and really he created a significant amount of pride in our community. He I'll say some of the conversation for me and him personally, but he told me that he had never been to a place like Sault Ste. Marie, and he had never been treated the way he was treated in Sault Ste. Marie. And he remarked on the kindness of all the people from Sault Ste. Marie that he interacted with. And he remarked on how he was treated and how members of his community was treated and how grateful he was for Sault Ste. Marie, referring to it as now a second home. So it was a really touching conversation, and it left me feeling a tremendous measure of pride for the effort that was put together. So I want to just give the community some scope of that effort so that you can share in kind of the positive feelings that I have and the gratefulness that I have to all the people that contributed. So I'm just going to go through a list of the organizations that participated in welcoming the good folks from North Spirit Lake First Nation and taking care of them while they were here. I want to start with the water tower and thanking them for their leadership in embracing this project and the evacuees. I want to recognize JJ and Donna. I want to recognize you too for your leadership and your team at the water tower. They were tremendous. City staff, we had staff from city transit, community service, cemeteries, communications. Specifically, I want to recognize the CEO who led the initiative, and really our emergency management staff, Lauren Perry and Naomi Tebow, were exceptional. So the city staff were fantastic. We had support from Sioux Police, Social Services, Ontario Health, Garden River First Nation. I want to recognize Chief Ricard and his team for the significant effort they made to welcome our guests. David Jones from Turtle Concepts, Batchewana First Nations, Kathy and the whole team at the Indigenous Friendship Center, Ontario Aboriginal Housing, Dr. Windeman, APH, Red Cross, Sioux Area Hospital, the clean team, laundry at Sioux Area Hospital, and then we had Superior Family Health Team, the Algoma Nurse Practitioner-led clinic, Algoma District Medical Group, the Group Health Center, Mamawasing North Shore Health Services, Inc., and then a whole list of organizations in the community that donated their time, their effort, and items to support the group that was here. It was an exceptional project with a tremendous amount of community collaboration, and the team that worked on this succeeded 1,000%. They made Sault Ste. Marie look great, and they certainly made our guests feel great. So I want to just recognize that work, and I want to thank them deeply for it as the mayor. And I understand that the federal and provincial agencies that participated and oversaw the work were impressed themselves and are going to take some best practices from what happened here and apply those practices to other communities when other evacuations have to occur. So job exceptionally well done to everybody who participated, and you have our collective gratitude for doing a great job. So before we get into the meeting, I want to acknowledge with respect that we are in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory, that the land on which we are gathered is traditional territory in the Anishinaabe, home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. I also want to recognize the Indigenous Friendship Center, our urban Aboriginal population, and acknowledge that this area is historically known as Bowatang. Madam Clerk, if we could start our meeting, please.
A motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Christian, resolved that the minutes of regular council meeting of July 12, 2021 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
Under agenda item 3, declarations of pecuniary interest, Councillor Shoemaker has declared with respect to the deeming bylaw for the Hughes B subdivision, as well as bylaw 2021-154, because Sault Ste. Marie Housing Corporation is a client of the law firm. And Councillor Nero has declared with respect to the John Rhodes Community Centre LED lighting upgrade and associated bylaw, as his daughter is employed by the consultant MET Energy Systems.
Any other conflicts, council, that are not otherwise disclosed in the agenda? See none, thank you.
I have a motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Hollingsworth, resolved that the agenda for August 9, 2021 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
Under agenda item 5, proclamations and delegations, agenda item 5.1, the Sault Ste. Marie Public Library 125th anniversary.
So I have a proclamation here for that. Before I get into that, I'll just recognize the staff and volunteers at our library for doing a fantastic job and creating great space for our community to spend time in and to learn in. So whereas the Sault Ste. Marie Public Library was first established by resolution of the Council of the Township of Sault Ste. Marie on August 31st, 1896. Whereas the Sault Ste. Marie Public Library has served the community for 125 years, providing resources and programming that has advanced literacy, knowledge, culture, and the overall enrichment of our community. Whereas the Sault Ste. Marie Public Library has continued to be a public space that is open and accessible to all members of our community, providing equitable service that respects the rights and dignity of each individual. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim August 31st, 2021 to be the Sault Ste. Marie Public Library's quasi-quinticentennial anniversary and a moment to be celebrated. Thank you.
Agenda item 5.2 is Social Services Awareness Week.
A proclamation for Social Services Awareness Week. Whereas social services are vital to our community's health, well-being, and prosperity, where Social Services Awareness Week highlights the unique and comprehensive services available within the city of Sault Ste. Marie. Whereas Social Services Awareness Week is an inclusive event that promotes the development of a community where everyone is valued, respected, and recognized. Whereas community social service agencies have come together with the aim of increasing public awareness about the programs and services available within our community. And whereas residents of Sault Ste. Marie and surrounding area are encouraged to engage, learn, and fully participate in the event scheduled throughout the week. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim August 23rd to August 27th Social Services Awareness Week, and invite all members of the community to learn, take part, and acknowledge the service and contributions that social agencies provide for the betterment of our community. In that respect, I'd like to recognize Councilor Dufour and all the city councilors who serve on the DSAB board, Mike Nadeau and the team at the DSAB for working hard to serve our community. Thank you.
Agenda item 5.3 is National Overdose Awareness Day.
I have a proclamation for National Overdose Awareness Day. Whereas International Overdose Awareness Day is recognized globally on August 31st to honor the individuals whose lives have been lost and acknowledge the grief felt by families, friends, and communities. And whereas Overdose Awareness Day hopes to raise awareness about the risks associated with substance use. Whereas Overdose Awareness Day aims to reduce the stigma related to substance use disorders and drug-related deaths. Whereas every person deserves the support they require to prevent injury and death from overdose. And it is imperative to support overdose prevention policies and protect and to help make sure everyone understands that overdose affects everyone, substance user, their families, friends, and community. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August 31st, 2021 as International Overdose Awareness Day, and encourage all citizens to recognize and support individuals in their community affected by substance use. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Will bring us to the consent agenda. I've got a motion by Councillors Hilsinger and Christian, resolved that all items listed under date August 9, 2021, agenda item 6, consent agenda, save and accept agenda items 6.3 and 6.17 be approved as recommended.
Okay, so who's got matters on consent? Councilor Christian, your hand was up first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start with 6.10, the biosolids request. Questions through you to Catherine Tatto, if I could.
Yeah, I guess I should, before you get going, Councillor Christian, I think council's aware, but just for the community's general information, Mr. Vare is the acting CAO right now. Mr. Malcolm is away, Mr. White is away this week, so Mr. Vare will be taking that role during this council meeting. So,
thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question really is just a summary of what I believe is being asked here. There's a lot of information, so if I can just explain what I understand it to be, and perhaps Ms. Tattle can confirm. So the goal here is to properly dispose of biosolids from the two treatment facilities. We've seen about a 75% reduction in solid waste because of the moving some of the stuff over the river. And most of that stuff acted as cover for biosolids, if I understand that correctly. And on top of that, the province is mandated and set a date of 2025 that a 50% target of food and organic waste needs to be recovered. Did I cover that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. Yeah, we're mandated to reduce our waste in terms of SSO, and so that part of the project is proposed to be part of the biosolids. There has been a diversion of waste to the US. However, our biosolids issue is ongoing. The reduction in paper due to increased recycling has reduced the amount of material that will absorb water. And we have ongoing challenges with odor mitigation. So in order to solve that the biosolids processing facility is required. In addition, we have a lack of cover, so the intent is to utilize the product from that facility as cover.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to be clear on that and for the public in general. So it sounds like this is an opportune time then to move forward with something like this. My other question would be, do projects like this, given the mandate of the provincial government, do you foresee any possible funding from the provincial government to help us with this down the road? Perhaps it's too early, but I don't know if you've had any early indications in your conversations with government officials about whether they'd be supporting this project for us in any way.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, I have not received any information that there's existing funding, but we have discussed that internally and we'll be monitoring the situation to determine whether or not something does come out in the future. And then we can review the guidelines to see if we're eligible at that time.
Thank you. Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, I think it's a good target and a good initiative. But it's also being mandated. So hopefully the provincial government could step in. My final question is, given that this is going to likely move forward, perhaps yourself, Ms. Tatto, or the CFO can answer this question. When do you foresee us actually, when will these numbers costs be budgeted for? What year do we see this? 2023?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. In terms of existing budget for construction, is that the question?
Yes.
So we do have budget in relation to the biosolids portion, which comes out of the sanitary sewer. And so we have existing budget already allocated. The portion in relation to source separated organics is a separate budget. And so we've done the waste management business and implementation plan to look at how that can be funded. And perhaps Jake can speak to the numbers in relation to that, but we have looked at those numbers and how it would be funded long term. And essentially the budget line zeroes out in about 15 years. Yeah, it was 2035.
Okay. All right. I don't know if Mr. Bruce has anything to add to that.
So yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, I can jump in on that. Until we have exact revised cost estimates, we're not sure when those are going to come in. Once we get those, then we'll be going to the future budget year, but I don't foresee those being in place for 2022, 2023 probably at the earliest.
Thank you. That's it for that one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, before I give anybody else a shot on 610, I'm just going to circle back to Councillor Shoemaker here. I think after we got underway, he noticed an additional conflict on the agenda that he wants to declare before we got any further. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was advised 6.19 is a matter my firm's acting on, and so I conflict on that matter in the associated bylaws by 21-156.
Okay,
Thank you.
so the clerk will record that and we'll separate that out when we vote on the consent matter in the bylaws. Do you have the information you need, Madam Clerk? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Christian raised 610. Anybody else on 610 before I move on? No, Councillor Christian, do you have any other matters?
Yes, two more. 6.13 sludge mixing East End treatment plant. I think this goes back to Ms. Tatto as well. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Tatto, what exactly in the report do you mean by sludge mixing challenges? I'm just, for the sake of my constituents and the constituents in the immediate area of the treatment plant, what exactly does that mean?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. The PUC operations staff have identified issues in relation to consistency. So in order to ensure that pumping can move forward effectively, you have to have a consistency that's ongoing, and it can't be changing all over the place. And it makes it really difficult for operations staff to operate the facility in basic terms.
When you say proper consistency of the flow of the material, is that what you're referring to when you talk about consistency?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. Yeah, it has to be mixed properly, and the existing pumps don't do that effectively in order for it to be pumped. And historically, we've seen higher percentage of solids than typical, and there's reasons for that, but it's created some challenges with the existing system.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple more questions on that one then. We've had upgrades and work done at the Easton treatment plant before, and we know what we're talking about here. It's no secret. My concern is how long the work will take, and whether there's any possible odor issues that we have to worry about while the work is being done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. At this time, I don't have a schedule before me. We need to do the design work first before we can even look at tendering and construction and so forth. But ongoing odor mitigation is always top of mind at our facilities. And so we look at any way possible that we can mitigate any potential odors. Of course, sludge can have some odor associated with it. So we can definitely look at that during the design period. In addition, if we feel that there is going to be an issue or a potential issue, we'll often send notices to adjacent residents so that they know that they can expect it during a certain time period if we feel that it cannot be avoided.
Thank you. And that was my final question that you answered. That relating to neighborhood communication. I think that solves a lot of problems. People get irritated if there's odor, but at least if they're aware of what's going on in advance, they could prepare themselves for it. So thank you for that. That's it for 6.13, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Christian, before we move on to your next matter, anybody else on 6.13? Okay, Councillor Christian, what's your last matter?
Yeah, the last matter is 6.2, the quarterly results. I was going through the numbers as I always do, and I noticed that as a whole, city staff salaries are trending at around 53.5% remaining on the budget run. Yet I see fire services at 47.28. And they are by far left with the least amount. So I'm just wondering if what the reason might be for that. I don't know if the fire chief can answer that, or Mr. Bruces, or somebody in the CFO's office could respond to that.
So we do have the fire chief with us. So we'll start with him perhaps, and then we can go to Mr. Bruces if he defers the remainder of the question that way. Chief, did you want to speak to that?
Yep, sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Shoemaker, or to Councillor Christian, the biggest portion of that would be through retroactivity. We had a collective agreement that was for years 2019 and 2020, and there was retroactivity paid out. So that's an increase to the salaries portion.
Do you know exactly how much that was in a lump sum? How much was paid as a result?
Yeah. It was $421,000 for the 2 years for retroactivity to all association members.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bruces, do we not budget for that in the current, in last year's, but in this current year's budget? Is that not baked into the numbers, even if it's an estimate?
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. With that one in particular, because it's related to 19 and 20, we would have budgeted for that. We would have budgeted that for that in prior years. Now, with any kind of unsettled salary increase, they're not budgeted for in that specific department's area. Just basically to try to not to interfere with the bargaining process. They
Right.
instead of being in, they are budgeted within the city. However, they're budgeted in a corporate contingency account.
Okay, all right. One final question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the fire chief. At this stage, I recall last year when we were looking at numbers at the 6-month mark, the salary numbers were high, and it was a result of overtime. Do you have any indication or can you tell us what the overtime compensation has been so far for this current fiscal? Would you happen to have that number?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. As we sit right now with our overtime, we're approximately $370,000 overtime.
370,000. Okay, how does that how much of that is related to fire activity and how much of it is related to sick time call out? Do you have that number?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, the call outs for fire suppression and activity were about $22,000 of that. For illnesses is about $256,000, and that would capture like injury, like WSIB or not WSIB, any injuries, non-op injuries, and illness.
What was the $22,000 number?
Call out, like if we have a large fire or fires to call out to help with the fire out.
Okay, that 256. How does that normally? How does that compare to other years?
I would say that's about typical for us.
Okay. One final question, I guess, and I hope I'm not being unfair to you. I'm just trying to understand these numbers because they are large numbers. So I apologize if you feel that way, but I need to get to understand this. So the 256, how much of that is injury related and how much of that is sickness related? Do you know?
Let me see here. Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, if we, not to throw a curve into it, but if we did look at specifics because we're dealing with COVID,
right?
We're approximately directly related to COVID sick. We're about $40,000 in illness for COVID. So if someone screened and didn't screen in and couldn't attend work because of the COVID protocols, there's about $40,000 related to that. The rest would be, so we're looking at approximately a little over $200,000, $216,000 for illnesses is what we'd be looking at. That is typically related when, so if you guys recall, we have 4 platoons. We have 19 firefighters on each platoon with 3 people on vacation. So that puts us at 16 people available every day. That is our minimum on-duty complement. Right. So every day we're at our minimum staffing level. So as soon as someone is ill, we're into premium cost to backfill to maintain our minimum on-duty complement for that day. And that's at a premium cost from the collective agreement. Right.
Yeah, I understand those numbers. That makes sense. I guess my only concern is given the that still seems like a very high number for call-in sickness. I understand that you're going to run a premium because people call in sick and you're running with minimums because you have holidays. My concern is people calling in sick. Given the fact that they're working 7 to 8 shifts a month, I that's where I'm struggling a little bit, but I'll save those questions for another day. It just seems that call-in sick time should be at an absolute minimum when someone is required to work 7 or 8 shifts a month. It seems to me that the frequency of call-in should be a lot lower. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, so that was 6.2, Councillor Christian, second quarter financial report. Anybody else in 6.2 before I move on to, so we'll go to Councillor Vezoal and Councillor Gardy on 6.2.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jacob. Jacob, I just want to talk about the Safe Restart funding. So from Appendix A, we're showing transit revenue right now at just about 1.8 million. And in your report, there is an unused portion from January to March in 2021 of about 1.1 million. Was any of that realized within that 1.8 transit number, the Safe Start? So that would be the phase 2, so the October to March, so October 2020 to March 2021. You're only showing used 359,000 from 2020.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezoal. Sorry if this chart is a little bit confusing, but just to simplify it. So at the start of 2021, we started with approximately $2.46 million available to be used for transit. That's just the grant portion of the transit funding. So we're expected to December 31st, 2021 to have a total COVID impact for transit of 2.429 million, which is in your Appendix A.
Okay.
Now we do have additional funding, as council did commit the 1.9 million out of the tax stabilization reserve towards this as well. So with that, the total available funding for transit is 3.1 million. We're only expected to use approximately 2.4 of that at this point in time.
And is the plan to exhaust the Safe Restart? Because I know that if we don't use it, it's very specific, that you would utilize that first.
Yeah, so there's the two parts of that. You have the operating and the transit. For the operating, which is for the rest of the city, yes, we definitely do expect to use the entire amount of the grant we received for that. Transit is a little bit different. If we do not use that, then it's our understanding that we will have to return that.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Jacob.
No problem.
I have nothing further on 6.2.
Okay, Councillor Gardy, you're up next. Go ahead.
I'm all right. Don't worry about it, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else in 6.2? Councillor Hollingsworth, I have you next on the consent list. Go ahead.
Thank you. The item is 6.7, the adventure bus.
Go
Through
ahead.
you, Mayor. Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Brett Lammy. Mr. Lammy, can you comment on the current pilot project that's happening with the beach bus? I've heard that it's quite positive, and also talking to a few riders, they've been enjoying the pilot project. Can you let us know how many riders there are now?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, to date, as of just yesterday, we have 323 rides today on the pilot over 14 weekend days, which averages out about 23 rides per day. What should be noted there is that includes 5 rain days, which we had no ridership. So if you exclude that, we're more around the 32 rides per day. So to date, it's been going fairly well.
Okay, great. And with regards to this pilot project you're proposing for the other part of the adventure bus, I was under the impression that we're thinking doing the pilot for this fall, but I noticed in your report you're suggesting we start in January of 2022. Can you comment on that?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, with respect to the first pilot, we were able to utilize some of the COVID relief Safe Restart funding. We were in one of the earlier phases. Coming out of into step 3 and then potentially out of that step, would be very difficult to have that as a COVID relief funding expenditure. And aside from that, we don't have any approved budgets. So the procedure we would use here is to refer this to the budget deliberation process as a service level request, and then that would be deliberated upon in December when we meet.
Okay, so if I understand correctly.
Sorry, that's an important point.
Go ahead.
Councillor Hollingsworth. It just, if we approve this tonight, it's not approving the project, really, it's approving the referral of the project to budget. And the discussion of whether we move forward would be at budget.
Right. That's exactly what I was trying to clarify. So again, it all depends on the budget debates, if this pilot actually takes place in January or not of 2022.
That's correct.
That's
correct.
Okay. Going back to Mr. Lamming, with regards to social services, I understand that you did reach out to social services to set up the beach bus. Do you have any feedback? Have you spoken to social services about the potential bus in January? Do they see this as another positive opportunity for their clients and so forth?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingworth, on both the projects, we've connected with social services and the local immigration partnership to promote the opportunity. They'd be willing to do so for the pilot that's proposed here as well to move forward with clients.
Okay, and I'm under the impression that you probably did not speak to social services about maybe potentially helping fund some of this pilot out of curiosity.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingsworth, no, this was just at this point referred to city budget for the moving forward for the deliberation.
Okay, and are you thinking that you may have a conversation with social services to see if they're willing to potentially give some funding because of the success of the beach bus?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingsworth, I'd be happy to speak to Mr. Doe.
Okay, and one last question on this item 6.7. If this does happen in January, I know that a number of our residents enjoy fat tire biking in the winter. Would you consider putting the bike racks on the bus that goes up to Hiawatha?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingsworth, all the new units that we're ordering that are arriving are coming with bike racks. So that would be something we would look to have in place for that pilot.
Okay, so again, so though if this happens in January, those that go onto the bus can enjoy maybe fat tire biking in the snow, potentially snowshoeing, potentially cross-country skiing. So very outdoorsy is my understanding.
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingsworth, that's correct.
Okay, and it's my understanding that again, we're targeting our new immigrant community, those that may not have a bus and young people that may not have access to transportation. But you also made a comment, I believe, that you're looking at changing the pickup locations versus how the beach bus picks up people now. Can you comment on the pickup locations?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hollingsworth, this would flow a little differently. Just we'd propose to start out at the Northern Community Center, then go to the terminal, then up to John Rhodes Community Center, Northern Transfer Point, then out to Hiawatha to try to have good reach across the municipality.
Okay, great. That's all on 6.7, Mayor.
Okay, I have Councillor Scott on 6.7, so we'll go to him, and when we're done this, we'll come back to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Lamming, just a quick question. How are we tracking these rides? Every time transit comes up, I know some people that work for transit, and they tend to reach out and tell me that the fare boxes are broken. The most recent time I was told that all the fare boxes are broken on all of our buses. If that's accurate, how are we tracking the ridership?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Scott, we have two ways we're actually tracking this. We do have a button that the drivers can push, and we're also tracking the results manually and recording through spreadsheets. So we have three ways we're actually tracking right now, and I get a recapture of the rides every week, which we follow up on to see what times are the busiest and just to gather the data in general.
Okay, and I know this is kind of back to that. Are we working on fixing the fare boxes? I understand the situation. I guess the repair person is no longer in town or something along those lines, but are we working toward that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Scott, it's actually an approved project and it's in the phase of getting tendered right now. So that will address that concern.
Perfect. Thank you. This looks awesome and I'm happy to see it. Thank you for all the hard work, guys.
Anybody else on 6.7? Seeing no one else on 6.7, Councillor Hollingsworth, your next matter.
Thank you. Item is 6.8, the Rural Economic Development Agreement. And through you, Mayor, to Mr. Travis Anderson. Mr. Anderson, I just wanted to first make a comment that your team and many of our staff members are always excellent at finding grant money and so forth. So I'm not surprised that this is on our agenda. You mentioned that this is to attract, I believe, healthcare specialists. I believe in the report you stated physicians, psychiatrists, personal support workers, registered nurse practitioners, and practical nurses. But I just want to clarify, I'm under the impression that this is also to attract registered nurses. Is that true? In your report, it does not state registered nurses.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, that was an oversight on our behalf. I would like to clarify that it is also intended to attract registered nurses. And it was just an omission that we failed to pick up on. So thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, great. That's, again, I just want to say I'm really happy that this is on our agenda, and excellent report. And I'm glad that you're going to be including registered nurses. That's all on this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on 6.8? Seeing nothing, Councillor Hollingsworth, do you have any other matters?
No, I don't. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Vezoal, you're next on my list. Do you have any matters? And then Councillor Bruni, I have you right after Councillor Vezoal.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's 6.22. And
Okay.
my question is just regarding the $250,000 that we're allocating for the SUE. Is that just going to be for the report, or will there be a project attached with that $250,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Brezo-Allen. That money is being used for a wide variety of things. We did pay for some independent consulting assistance with doing population and employment projections, as well as future land needs. We will be, to complete this project, we will be very soon coming out with a rather large background paper, which sets out what we know, or what we heard from our consultation, and what is being proposed. But in order to kind of help move this along to a final state, we are looking at hiring a consultant to do two things for us. One is to edit that large document down to a proper official plan, which would be much shorter and meet the provincial requirements. And it also provides us with a second set of eyes. Aside from the work on the population and employment and land use projections, all of the work has been done in-house by city staff. And I think it would be would be a good spend of taxpayers' money to spend a small amount to get a second set of eyes to look at that before we bring it back to council for approval. That will also go towards the consultation. We've already done a considerable amount of consultation, and as you see in our report, we're proposing to do some additional consultation prior to finalizing the draft.
Are those consultations going to be similar to the ones that were done like in the Monterey Gardens neighborhoods, and then the historical neighborhoods? I remember attending one at both the church on Upton Road and at St. Andrew's Church. So what other consultations are going to be kind of forming this next phase?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's the official plan is a very comprehensive document, and this will be an opportunity for the public to take a look at how it all fits together. So if someone has a particular interest on natural heritage protection or economic development or transportation, they'll have an opportunity to discuss that with staff, but they'll also have an opportunity to see how it all fits together. We are hoping, and this is somewhat COVID, not somewhat, it's totally COVID related. We were very successful previously in holding a number of open houses. And, there's still opportunities for people to call us, for people to talk to us through email and through Zoom calls. But we are hoping, if things work out over the next couple of months, that we'd be able to hold a series of open houses in the fall.
I know the ones at the soup kitchen were really well attended, Dawn. I just want to say on behalf of myself and Ward 2, and I know Luke feels the same way, as the whole strategy with the Jamestown was really well executed, and I want to congratulate you and your team on that. So thanks for the information. I look forward to all of it in its final form. So thank you. No other questions.
Okay, Councillor Gardy, is your hand up on 622? And just so council knows, on the general list for consent, I have Bruni, Hilsinger, and Gardy. So I saw your hands. But on 622, go ahead, Councilor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. In the report that Mr. Tenazzo provided this evening, and Mr. McConnell's speaking to, it referenced, Mr. McConnell, that you did a lot of the work in-house. You kind of reiterated it a bit ago. Would you have any sense, an estimate of what kind of savings were had by doing a lot of this work in-house?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a bit difficult to estimate. When this project was first initialized, when we sort of got off and running, council did approve a $250,000 budget for the total project, and we will be within that budget. I don't see any difficulty meeting that, being less than $250,000. By comparison, I know when Sudbury did their new official plan, and it's not a direct comparison because it was done a number of years ago, and it's also a much larger community. Their cost was over $1 million, and that was also done in-house using consultants to assist. So it is an expensive process. Can we make the comparison that could we have saved $750,000? It was substantial. But I must say, I think having the in-house staff, the people who are on the ground dealing with this every day, also leads to a good quality product, which is as important, I think, as the cost savings to us.
Understood. Thanks very much. And just a comment, in the report, it mentioned that one of the kind of hurdles you had in terms of timing of getting this back to us was, the development volumes and the inquiries have been significantly higher than they have been over the course of the last 20 years, which is some good news, I think. So thanks for that.
Okay, 622. Okay, seeing none. Do you have anything else, Councillor Bezo-Allen?
Nothing. Thank you.
Councillor Bruni, you're next on my list.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 6.23, new active transportation. I guess to Mr. McConnell or to Mr. Turco or Justine Palmer. In the past, we've had a cycling master plan and we had a transportation master plan. Now you're coming to council asking a maximum cost of $150,000 for a new active transportation plan. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this, I guess, Mr. McConnell, since you're...
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. Our cycling master plan was done in 2007, so it's coming up to being almost 15 years since we created it, and large components of that cycling plan have already been implemented. That was focused on the hub trail as well as some key connections, which are largely in place. The difference between a cycling master plan and an active transportation plan is an active transportation plan considers all forms of transportation, non-motorized transportation. So it also includes pedestrians, people who are out walking. So we need to do that because we have a lot of disconnects. It will also provide us with guidance on a complete streets policy, which council has discussed a couple of times. We're looking at implementing that as part of the downtown whenever we're possible.
Mr. McConnell, you've lost your sound. Your show is muted. So if you could just,
Sorry, I'm now back. I hope you heard the first part of that.
Yeah, actually, just maybe the last 10 seconds at most.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we'd like to do is create a document that looks at pedestrian, looks at cycling, looks at people who jogging, looks at both recreational and business opportunities to move people around, also works on the complete streets plan and incorporates the new mountain biking emphasis in the city. I think that has great potential for us, as well as making sure that everything's barrier free. So at the end of the day, I think what we're we would like to get to is a document that covers all of those things, that has had extensive public consultation, that the public is supportive of, and that council can approve, feel comfortable with us, because I do believe there's going to be funding opportunities coming down the line. We've seen that from both the federal and provincial governments, and we expect that to continue. So what we need to be able to do is say, where's our priorities? What is it we need to do, and take advantage of those funding opportunities in future years?
Thank you. So if this is approved tonight, how long is this process before it comes back to council?
I see this coming back to council late winter, early spring next year. We are going to do an extensive amount of public consultation on this.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. On 623, anybody else? So we're gonna go Hilsinger, Gardy, then Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Bruni, for asking the questions that I was going to ask. That was perfect. Those were going to be my two questions, which was about the public consultation and to Mr. McConnell, and also what the timeline looked like on that. And so, Mr. Mayor, if I may, if I could just add a couple of comments, would that be all right? Thank you. Thank you. You know, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change United Nations report came out today, and it said every region on Earth in multiple ways is affected by climate change. And there are so many reasons that we need to undertake this plan, to do our share in terms of providing more opportunities for health and wellness for our residents, and additionally, using more active transportation to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We need accessibility, we need complete streets. And I encourage my colleagues on council to really think a lot about how we're going to fund this kind of thing, because in order to make a difference and make a difference in the near future, because we all have to be concerned about climate change and the effect it's having on our planet, I think we have to fundamentally and radically rethink about how we prioritize the investments that we make as a community into this type of infrastructure. And I look forward to talking about that and looking at the ways we could do things differently when it comes to budget time. So thank you, Mr. McConnell. This is fantastic news, and I look forward to contributing and hearing what the community has to say.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hilsinger. Councillor Gardy.
Well said, Councillor Hilsinger. So I have one question to Mr. McConnell through you, Mr. Mayor. This active plan, is it a 4 seasons plan? I'm thinking pedestrian wise.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is. I mean, we do that now. We plow some sidewalks in the winter, not all sidewalks. We do plow some parts of the hub trail, not all parts of the hub trail, but that will be a consideration. What we're looking at, and one of the reasons we want to do that is right now we have a bunch of segments throughout the community of trails and sidewalks. We want to make sure they link together well so that people can safely walk regardless of the weather to their destination. The other part that goes with that is the barrier-free or the accessibility part. We really want to make sure that people, regardless of their mobility abilities, are able to use active transportation alternatives year-round.
I appreciate those comments, Mr. McConnell. Thanks very much. And like every time we discuss active transportation, I'm just going to talk about linking up neighborhoods in the West End to the best degree that we can, because for the efforts that the city staff has put forward thus far, they've been much appreciated. And I'm sure you have some ideas on how to expand those opportunities. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gardy. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Don McConnell. I think I heard you say that this is a plan for non-motorized vehicles or non-motorized items. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So just for clarification, does that mean electric bikes are not included, which electric bikes are becoming more and more popular?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that will be a matter that we're going to have to sort out as part of this, because there's a difference between electric bikes and electric scooters and motorcycles, and it has to do with speed limits. And this is something that different communities are really struggling with right now. I know Toronto has just totally banned everything from their waterfront trail. I think largely because it's so well used by so many other people, it was just causing hazards. So that's one of the things we're going to sort out. Certainly people in motorized wheelchairs will be welcome, but that's a very, very slow speed. And when you start to introduce vehicles of different speeds on a trail, that becomes a little more difficult, and you have to look at separated trails to avoid creating a risk.
Right. I'm glad you said that, because again, electric bikes are, as you know, are becoming very popular, especially with the older demographics who still enjoy biking, but they find that the electric bikes help them a little bit more. And I'm glad you mentioned scooters, because I'm not really referring to wheelchairs, but more again, the aging population are using scooters throughout our community. So as you move forward, I also would encourage you to look at scooters. Those two pieces really concern me, because of our aging population that depend on these wonderful modes of transport. So that's all. Thank you.
Anybody else on 6.23? Okay, thank you. Councilor Bruni, did you have anything else on the consent agenda?
No more questions. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings me to Councilor Hilsinger. Councilor Hilsinger, did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to chat about the active transportation plan.
Okay. Councilor Gardy, do you have anything else on the consent agenda?
I do not any longer.
Councilor Shoemaker, that brings me to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 6 point in the Community Development Award for 2020.
You know what? You're cutting out, I think it's 6.21.
0.21. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Typically, we'd be this if we were in the chamber, but definitely worth recognition. The IDA development at the corner of Street and Queen Street. You kind of fail to appreciate it when you see it every day, how good it looks. You see the comparison shots of what the buildings did look like a few short years ago, 3-4 years. These buildings were in much need of upgrade, and got them thanks to Mr. Greco and his partner. So that is, more than we could ever ask for downtown redevelopment strategy. If business partners in town could get together and do this one business on each block, our downtown plan would be a much different position. So just give recognition the job that they've done on Queen Street and Broad Street, and I didn't want to go without noting, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for letting me speak to this matter.
Yeah, happy to, Councilor Shoemaker. You are cutting out a bit, so your comments were a bit spotty. I think we can all agree with them and support them entirely. And just for the record, we will be doing something in a more formal public manner to recognize this award. It's passing tonight in consent, and then we'll do something to recognize the development. It's a fantastic development. The owners of the building, the proprietors, did a great job with it, and it really looks great, especially right beside the Village Media Building. They look really great next to each other, and that corner is really a great corner. So support your comments entirely, and we will do something publicly to recognize their contribution. Anybody else in 621? Councilor Hollingsworth, did you want to add something to that?
I do. I do want to echo what you're saying, but basically, many business people from that corner right down towards the old hospitals, to the Cameracraft area, to Stork and Bundle, they have been working very hard at updating that block for the last 3 to 5 years. And I just want to also give a shout out to that particular block, and shout out to other business groups that are working together to pick a common theme. And you're starting to see a common theme throughout the community, throughout the downtown, such as particular colors, the attraction of flowers, the attraction of tables and chairs outside. Of course, I do also want to give a shout out to our staff for working really hard with our business community downtown to make the patios attractive as well and allowing more creativity with our patios. Thank you, Mr. McConnell, for that and others. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Shoemaker, do you have anything else on consent? Oh, I've lost Councillor Shoemaker here. So, Council, do we have any other matters on consent? I see none. So, Madam Clerk, we can wrap up the consent agenda and move on then.
Yes, I have read the motion. It's accepting items 6.3, 6.17, and 6.19.
That includes the one that Councillor Shoemaker added once we got going.
That's correct.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
So on each of those items, there's not a motion for any of them because they have associated bylaws.
Okay.
But agenda item 6.3, John Rhodes Community Center LED lighting upgrade. If there's questions, now would be the time.
So does anybody have anything on 6.3? Doesn't appear so, Madam Clerk, so we can move on.
And similarly, item 6.17, the deeming bylaw for the Hughes B subdivision, 540 Albert Street East, 165 and 177 Brock Street. I would point out that there was an amendment subsequent to the agenda being published to correct the legal description in that report.
Council, do you have anybody want to speak to 6.17? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
And then just 6.19, property declared surplus and sale, part of 148 Daisy Road.
Council, anybody on 619? So there's no independent motion for these. There's bylaws that relate to all of them, and we'll pass that when we get to the bylaws. Okay, Madam Clerk, we can move on.
Agenda item 7.3.1, the Downtown Plaza update. I have a motion by Councillors Hilsinger and Christian. Resolved that the report of the Deputy CAO, Community Development and Enterprise Services dated August 9, 2021, concerning Downtown Plaza development update be received, and that staff be authorized to submit relevant funding applications to support the plaza, including the Tourism Relief Fund, and commence the fundraising campaign for the Downtown Plaza.
Okay, Council, so questions or comments on 7.3.1? Okay. I'll start with Councillor Vezo-Allen and then I'll go to Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Vare. Mr. Vare, thank you very much for the report, and it's definitely disappointing news that we didn't get the funding through NOHFC. However, what you've brought for us is a fundraising plan, and which I certainly appreciate. And I just want to ask if there's been any consideration for us to finance the shortfall, just like we agreed with the twin pad to finance. So have you talked to our CFO, or has there been any thoughts as to looking into what interest rates would be, the borrowing amount, and what that would look like?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. Thank you for the question. Right now, the policy around borrowing for external projects has a threshold of $5 million. So we have previously allocated funds towards the plaza, so we would be under that $5 million threshold at this point. With that said, we are looking, as we indicated in the report, we are looking at other options to try and fund the plaza, make up for that shortfall from the NOHFC contribution. We'll come back to council in September with some further thoughts on that. And if we have some funds available to us, we do know that this year there are extra funds coming to us through what is now the Canada Community Building Fund, $4.4 million. And that will be coming to council in September with recommendations on spending that. So we have a few different options that we will be considering and come back to council in September with recommendation.
Okay. My only other question, and I think it relates to, you know, the comments from NHFC that there are other like amenities in the area. In terms of the ice surface that is the plan for the winter time, will that be free of charge for people to skate on, or will there be a charge?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, that will be free of charge for the residents of Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay, as well with the water feature, same as the splash pad, which has been quite well utilized this summer. I walk there almost every day and it's really great to see. So same thing with the water feature and all of the other planned amenities. They are all free and open to the public, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. No other questions on this matter.
Okay, that brings me to Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Bear. Just going back to the fundraising campaign, I'm under the impression that, of course, all the details of the campaign have not been sketched out yet, and that you're probably working on those details. However, do you know if you're going to be publishing a list of items, potential items that businesses or individuals might want to donate to? Or are you just going to be looking for donations that go into a general donation fund? That's my first question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we had previously provided to council an overview of the fundraising plan, and we will have items that individuals or businesses can sponsor or contribute to within the plaza, different elements like the play feature, the stage, etc. As well, we'll also have a donor wall within the plaza fundraising and for display in the plaza in the future. So people are making contributions to the plaza, whether they be businesses for sponsorship or individual contributions can be recognized on a donor wall based on their contribution amount.
Okay, great. And I know that you're coming back to council. Will you be coming back with the fundraising campaign plan to us, or probably not? Or are you just going to label as there will be a campaign?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we will use the document that was previously provided to council as the campaign, and we'll be going out to businesses with council approval tonight, obviously, to raise funds in support of that campaign.
Okay, so it sounds like you're going to actively start fundraising basically right away. Is that my understanding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, with council approval tonight, yes, we would start right away on launching that fundraising campaign.
Okay, and just reiterate, and for the people at home, what's your time frame for the campaign? How long will it run for approximately?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, we hadn't set an end date to the campaign. Certainly we'll be working in the with council approval tonight. We'll be working hard over the coming months to launch that campaign. We have been in discussions with the BIA, and they are forming a subcommittee to help with that fundraising campaign. So we'll be launching that in earnest again with council permission tonight immediately.
Okay, and just one last question. This sounds like the fundraising committee or what you just referred to. Will you be looking for a council member to sit on it or help out with that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, the subcommittee is a part of the BIA. I know we have council members that are part of the BIA board, and that is something that they're organizing within the BIA structure. Alongside that, obviously, we'll have our staff that are working as well, but we want to make sure we do that in a coordinated way with the BIA.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I personally always support fundraising campaigns, especially at community level. I feel strongly that it brings the community closer together and it creates some pride. and allows everyone from all walks of life to feel like they're part of a substantial project, especially this special project. So just knowing that people can donate at a small level to something medium to something larger, it's just, again, brings the energy, positive energy to the community, just like how everybody pitched in for Arch, pitched in for the hospitals, and it'd be fun to see people pitching in for this wonderful project. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Anybody else on this report? Councillor Gardy, and then Councillor Shoemaker, and then Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Acting CAO Ver. In the letter received from NOHFC from Ms. Carhey, the Manager of Program Services, it says that it was determined that the project was declined because many of the project's proposed recreational amenities are available nearby in the community. Was that one piece of paper, that one letter, the sole communication you received, or did they list any of those similar or like amenities in and around nearby in our community?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, I did receive a call from the executive director, and then we received the letter. But essentially, what we received in the letter was the total of the detail related to the similar venues.
Right. So there was no enumeration of any kind of venues that specifically that they were speaking of, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, that's correct.
Thank you. I was very disappointed by the decision of NOHFC. I think their position is a weak one, and I'm very hopeful that we will be able to proceed at some scale close to the original. And I wish everybody luck on whatever is decided moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you. Started my computer. I'm wondering if you can now.
We can. Give us a bit more of a sample size and I'll tell you if we're okay.
I will. Through you to Surveyor. Surveyor, under paragraph 2 of your report, is fined $2 million per month, as it's titled. It talks about $100,000 fundraising target. $200,000 has been raised Rotary Club and $400,000 remain. So am I to understand correctly? Only been one donation thus far?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. There was only one donation, but we haven't started the fundraising campaign. We were waiting for word from NOHFC before we launched the campaign. Given the news from NOHFC, we'd like to launch the campaign with earnest. We have received some calls from other people that are interested in donating to the campaign, but we hadn't formally launched the campaign yet.
Okay, and what was the finale of what we raised for the splash pad fundraising for that project?
Sorry, you broke up there a little. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Did you say for the splash pad campaign?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Barry is looking for the total that we raised for the splash pad. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have that information in front of me. Unless someone else from the team has that, we may have to get back to you on that.
I'm just going to try calling in. So I don't know if you can come back to me.
Yeah, I can come back to you. So I will go to Councillor Dufour and then you can call in. Councillor Dufour. So Councillor Dufour has turned his video off and muted. And notwithstanding that he was the next person on my list, does anybody else like to speak to this matter? While everybody else works out their technical challenges. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine was more in lines with comments, kind of, I guess. I've asked at the last meeting about ground testing, and I was looking to get more detail, and I was given answers that that's not normally available to us. So just to give some context, without that information, I'm not going to be supporting anything going forward on the plaza, just out of health and safety concerns for the community.
Okay, Councillor Dufour, your go.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to also kind of comment on what Councillor Gardy was saying. I was perplexed by the letter, given that I think it's pretty clear that the plaza is a very signature investment in our downtown. You know, we've heard from many consultants, and it's very obvious that here in Sault Ste. Marie, we don't have a town square. We don't have a central focal point in the middle or the center of our downtown. It's very long and stretched out along what I would say is one of Northern Ontario's most beautiful sections of waterfront. And you know, this council and councils before it have talked many times about how to properly activate that waterfront and tie it into the business district that we have on Queen Street and the merchants there. This plaza is the result of, you know, at least 4 years of that effort to try to activate our waterfront and to tie it to our downtown. It ties in with everything we've done with Bay Street, a further investment that we plan on making in our farmers market. And I think it's just, quite frankly, pretty productive to see it as just a plaza and a recreational amenity. I think it's significantly more than that to our downtown and to the heart of our community. So I'm happy to see that staff are going to take another crack at finding a way to fund this in the most responsible way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Shoemaker, are you in by phone now? I see a second. There you go. I see a phone line.
I think so. Yeah.
Go
Can you
ahead.
hear me?
I can.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So back to Mr. Ver, if I may. On page 2, I think it is on page 2 of your report, it talks about, there's a statement, the best practice for a municipal plaza is clear. It should be as close to the main commercial street as possible to benefit local businesses. And I read this and chuckled because this was a statement that many other people advanced the position of in favor of keeping the bus terminal near the local BIA businesses. And so I'm wondering why the difference in position for the plaza versus the bus terminal.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, I think the main difference being that the plaza is there to generate the foot traffic and the activities in the downtown core, and also the location within the footprint of the BIA and the businesses there and the activities that are typically done in our downtown area. The transit discussion, we still have transit stops throughout the downtown. We're still bringing people throughout the downtown through the many transit stops that we have. So the location of that terminal really was separate and aside from bringing people through to the downtown and having them frequent businesses throughout the downtown. There's service now that stretches throughout the downtown that all our transit riders can take advantage of.
And you do mention the foot traffic further in your report on page 6. It talks about, your quote is, nor would it make sense to invest further in amenities at Bondar Park because the goal is to drive activity and foot traffic close to the merchants on Queen Street. But I mean, I guess to some extent, wouldn't you, isn't a terminal, doesn't it generate more traffic than simply a bus stop where someone is getting on and off for a specific purpose?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, in the analysis that we were looking at, you know, we don't believe that the relocation of the transit terminal will decrease the foot traffic to the businesses all along Queen Street and Bay Street.
Okay, and I'm getting a bit far off track, so I don't want to go further down that path. I'm not totally sure I agree with you on those statements, but I think that a plaza in this area is a good idea. And I said at the last meeting that I would only support it up to the cost that was proposed at the last meeting, which is whatever the total cost is minus $2 million that we were looking at from NOHFC. That's still my position. So in terms of advancing the fundraising project, I'll support that. But if it comes to spending additional municipal tax dollars on the plaza, my position is going to remain the same, which is that no additional municipal tax dollars ought to be spent on this plaza. I think if anything, if there is not enough fundraising that's achieved, or if there are not sources of revenue from higher levels of government or other funding applications, then it needs to be looked at paring back the scale of the project. And that'll be, I just want that to be clear from my position, and so that the community knows, so that staff knows which way I'll be voting on future future proposals that come to us on this issue.
Hey, Councilor Nero, you had your hand up, and have Councilor Christian on that.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, because of this latest decision by NOHFC, where does this put our timelines for the plaza? Has anything changed as far as timelines of where it's starting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Nero, we were hoping to hear from NOHFC and advance the construction drawings at the end of August. So this will likely push us back a few weeks to a month on that process. And again, pending approval, obviously. So it will have a small effect, but we don't think it would have a significant effect on the schedule to date. Also, Mr. Mayor, if I can, I think I have the answer from staff to Councilor Shoemaker's other question on the splash pad. It was approximately 125,000 that was raised for the splash pad.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Nero, did you have anything else?
No, that's it. I'll wait for September when it comes back.
Okay, Councilor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share Councilor Shoemaker's position on this. I think you'll recall when this idea was floated, I was in full support, and I still am. I think it's absolutely necessary for the downtown. I think it is well thought out. It makes perfect sense, and I think it's just what the downtown needs. However, I do share Councilor Shoemaker's position and the other councilors that have mentioned this, that there has to be a tipping point, and we need to find additional funding to fund this, because I too am not willing to spend any more taxpayer dollars on it, as important as it is. As far as NOHFC is concerned, I think they were, with all due respect, I think they're very short-sighted in their decision. And I'm a bit perplexed, given that they've been involved in other initiatives to revitalize, providing funding for revitalization of the downtown. I can't for the life of me figure out what influenced them in their decision, although I'm confused. It's pretty obvious that the initiative is one that's going to develop the downtown and well positioned to do so. I urge staff, if they can get additional information, find out what the process was in coming to this decision, rather than a form letter saying that we're duplicating services, etc. I just find it hard to believe that that's their reasoning. It seems short-sighted to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Council, I'll just add a few comments, and then we can move on from this. For all the reasons that Councilor Dufour outlined and Councilor Vezo Allen outlined, I think this is an incredibly important project for our downtown. And there are a lot of business owners that are making significant investments in the downtown. We recognize one tonight. Councilor Shoemaker made positive comments about their development. We owe it to those business owners to invest in our infrastructure in the same way that they're investing in their infrastructure. It's obviously a disappointment that we did not receive the NOHFC funds, but I'm not going to dwell on that. And if this isn't a project that's important to us, we should find a way to move forward with it. To the point that relates to costs, I was clear with staff when I received the information that we didn't receive these funds, that when they did report back to council, they had to give council multiple options on how to proceed. And they had to give council's options on how to proceed within the envelope that council has already approved for funding. So, I think our next discussion will involve what the project looks like in the scope that you've approved, as far as the monetary amount you've approved, and what we will have to do more than that, and whether there's an appetite in council to do that. So we'll be able to have that discussion in September. You'll be able to kind of make that decision with the fullness of information, and either we'll go forward with the project as it's envisioned, or we'll scale down the project to meet the budget that we ultimately think we could put together. But in any event, I think it's a critical project. When you look at how nice Bay Street looks now and how well received it is. When you look at what we're going to do with Queen Street, when you consider Spring Street, a potential Woodruff project, and you look at our marina and what we've invested in that, I think this is a really a great project that is in the right place that will add a critical mass to our downtown. And when you marry that to what the next report, and really, to me, the real tipping point on this and what will make a really big difference is the Mill Market being in that facility, in that space. I think that will drive all kinds of traffic to our downtown that we don't currently have, and will create all kinds of foot traffic. It's a really nice concept. It's a really nice project, and our downtown can be much different in 2022, 2023 going forward than it currently is now. So I continue to support the project, and I look forward to our discussion in September, and I trust we'll come to the right decision, whatever that decision happens to be then. So we have a vote up here on our screens here, so I'll just call it for the purpose of the general public. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, we can just cast the vote. That would be appreciated. The report's approved. And good luck with your fundraising campaign, Mr. Varon. I know that there's some interest in supporting it, and I hope that interest gets us a lot closer to our goal. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
That brings us to 7.3.2, which I think is really exciting. I think the renderings are really, really, really cool, and I think this will make a big difference to our downtown, and I welcome any comments or questions on it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just need to know how Councillor Brew, there he went. I've closed that vote then, and I'll read the motion for 7.3.2. It's a motion by Councillor Shoemaker and Hollingsworth, resolved that the report of the Deputy CAO Community Development and Enterprise Services dated August 9, 2021 concerning Brock Street property update future home of Mill Market be received as information.
Okay, so questions on 7.3.2. Councillor Hollingsworth, and then Councillor Hilsinger.
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Ver. I know that this is just a first time sketch rendering. Can you just elaborate further on the rendering? I'm under the impression that you're going to come back to us with more information about the potential look. I believe that there's a potential where you'll have a lot more windows allowing natural light to be shone into the building. Can you just elaborate on those two? And will we have a chance to have another sketch, another rendering to look at?
Sure, you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. If the project is successful in funding and getting approval to move ahead, the next stage in the project would be doing the detailed construction drawings. So we would be engaging with an architect to finalize those construction drawings. And as part of that process, there would be potential for input related to the project design. We have had positive feedback to date, working closely with the Mill Market Board on the renderings and the layout and the project. So, we're excited about this project. We think it'll be a great addition to the downtown and the plaza. And we look forward to providing further updates to council in the future.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Hilsinger and then Councillor Vazo-Allen.
Sorry, Mayor Provenzano, I was just shuffling my glasses. My apologies. I don't have a question.
Councillor Vazo-Allen, I assume you weren't shuffling your glasses.
I was not shuffling my glasses, although you have to be careful. It's like being at an auction, right, Donna? You got to be careful. Might bid on something. My only question, Mr. Ver, is have the Mill Market Board of Directors looked at the Ontario Trillium Foundation? They do have capital infrastructure funding. The only caveat is that they must have a 5-year lease. So I just wanted to just bring that up more as a comment. And that could be used for both capital and leasehold improvements.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vazo-Allen, I believe they have looked at that. We'll make sure that is on the radar. These other ones that they have applied to came up fast and had very short deadlines. So there was a bit of a rush to get those in and through, but we will be looking at other sources moving forward. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I do know that there has been some, there's going to be some changes possibly happening with FedNor. So I would have them reach out to FedNor as well.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, do I have anybody else on 7.3.2? Okay, seeing none? We have all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so the vote is carries.
That brings us to 7.8.1, the Public Library Board. There's one vacancy. I have a motion by Councillors Nero and Hollingsworth resolved that Kendall Barbin be appointed to the Public Library Board from August 9, 2021 to November 14, 2022.
Councillor Dufour, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I do, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as a former library board member, I was really impressed with the slate of candidates who applied for this position. I believe my count was there were 12 applications, and the committee really had the work cut out for them, choosing from what I thought was a very strong field of candidates. Obviously, a lawyer, accountants, many other professionals applied for these positions, and I hope that any of the unsuccessful candidates will also apply when there are far more positions available at the turn of our next term. I think it's great that so many people were interested in serving, and I'd like to congratulate Ms. Barbin on her appointment. I think she'll do well. Thanks.
Anybody else? Yeah, thank you to all the people who did express interest. Councilor Dufour is correct. It was a great field. And congratulations to Kendall. I'm sure she'll do a great job there. So all in favor? Motion is carried.
Under agenda item 8.1, council meeting schedule, a motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Christian, whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie City Council has consistently met twice monthly for upwards of 25 years, and whereas in 25 years since the current council schedule was established, the city and the entire world has changed dramatically. And whereas it is prudent for the city to review its processes to ensure they meet with the current needs of the municipality, now therefore be it resolved that in the fall of 2021, city staff bring forward additional options for the 2022 council schedule for council to choose from.
Okay, Councilor Shoemaker, we'll go to you first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. This is about just seeing if our process still fits our needs. So it's not about it's not about proposing something different. I want city staff to investigate and see whether or not there's something that better fits our current needs. Obviously, and my research only went back 25 years to what was that, 1995 or so. Beyond that, I suspect the council agenda or meeting schedule was fairly similar, but I just couldn't find it. So since 25 years ago, we talk on the phone differently than we used to. We read books differently than we used to. Our cars have features a lot different than they used to. And so I think we have to look at whether or not our council meeting schedule has to change. We are meeting differently than we were even 18 months ago. So does our council meeting schedule of once every 2 weeks and once in the summer still fit the municipality's current needs, or is it something that should be updated? And that's what I'm asking city staff to come back to us with an alternative schedule for next year and let council decide on what it wants to do on a go-forward basis.
Okay, do you, Councilor Christian, I believe you seconded this. Did you want to speak to it?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it hurts to look at this. Not sure what they'd come back with. I don't think the exercise is a bad one. I agree with Councillor Shoemaker. It's something that we could at least look at and contemplate, given the changes over the last several years. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. Councilor Shoemaker, you and I have discussed this a few times. I've discussed it with staff. I think staff last year was, prior to the pandemic, was looking at different options, and we're gonna, propose more than one schedule to council. And then the pandemic, came, and they decided that they would just stay with the status quo. But I'm sure staff will be happy to report on this. It's not going to take long, because you're probably not surprised to hear that there aren't very many different options we could consider as far as scheduling goes. And they'll probably have at the next meeting or the meeting after that, probably the next meeting, a report to you that would give you that potential option. But we should just all be mindful of the fact that our schedule will be different next year in any event, because as an election year, there are different things that impact the schedule and different timings that we have to be sensitive to. So we'll get that report. If it's passed by council, and I expect it will be, you'll have that report likely, I think, by the September meeting. Any questions or comments on this? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Agenda item 8.2, labor force recruitment. It's a motion by Councillors Christian and Shoemaker. Whereas in 2020, a report from the Federal Ministry of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada determined that 26% of the working population in Sault Ste. Marie is over the age of 55. And whereas nearly 11,000 people are expected to retire within the next decade, requiring an influx of workers to fill the gap. And whereas the number of people exiting the workforce over this period is projected to be 1.5 times as many entering, creating a shortage of workers. And whereas although the challenges listed above are daunting, the current trend of utilizing remote employees and the positive lifestyle the Sault has to offer can help mitigate the effects of a shrinking labor pool and present opportunities for the city to attract new residents. And whereas Sault Ste. Marie has embarked on an initiative to recruit remote workers and new residents through the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Centre and the Community Development and Enterprise Services Department, formerly the Economic Development Corporation. And whereas it is important for council and the community at large to be cognizant of the opportunities and remain informed and engaged in the progress of these initiatives, now therefore be it resolved that council asks staff to provide quarterly updates on these initiatives with the goal of filling these employment gaps and grow the community population. And further, that this report include, but not be limited to, the following information: summary of recruitment activities, number of views or inquiries relating to recruitment activities, new positions filled through recruitment activities, current challenges or shortfall or opportunities in particular industries, and local initiatives, training courses, educational programs, post-secondary, etc.
Okay. I'm going to start with you, Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we all recall, on June 28th, a few meetings ago, staff came to council with a knowledge-based recruitment strategy, and I, at the time, was very happy to hear this, and I applaud staff for bringing this forward. And when you look at the statistics, at first blush, it sounds negative and very daunting. And I said it on June 28th, and I'll say it again. I see this as nothing more than a great opportunity for Sault Ste. Marie. I've lived here all my life. I have lots of people, friends who have left the city, and so many of them have said, love Sault Ste. Marie, want to live in Sault Ste. Marie. There's no opportunities in Sault Ste. Marie. So the first time that I can remember in my lifetime, we're in a position to actually provide employment for people. So I don't look at this thing as a negative whatsoever. I look at this as a positive. However, I do think it's important that we as council and the city at large need to be mindful and always on alert about these challenges. I think the quarterly report will keep this front and center for everybody, including the general public. We all have a role to play. We are all recruiters in this exercise. And the only way that's going to happen is if we get quarterly updates. And I'm very interested in knowing the activities that we're going to pursue in our recruitment activities, in our recruitment efforts rather. But if there are no solid results, it's a waste of time. If they're not going to report on specific items, some of which I've listed, we're wasting our time. We need it. It's not enough to say that we did advertising and we tried to do this and we tried to do that. We need results, not to point fingers, but to keep us all aware of where we stand. And all of us need to play a role in promoting this. So I offered up this resolution so that staff are aware, if this is passed, that this is what council wants, this is what council needs, and this will keep this item on the front burner for everybody in our community. And in a few years, if we do this right, we're going to be very successful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Christian. Any other comments or questions on this motion? Councillor Christian, the one caveat I want to give you is that staff obviously will do what it can to respond to the motion, but some of this information and material would be dependent on other parties sharing it with us. So to the extent that you recognize that they'll do their best to comply with it, with the information they receive from our project partners, then I don't see it, no one sees an issue with it.
Right, and even to that point, Mr. Mayor, the fact that we're bringing it forward, we're putting everybody on alert that we need this information. It's important. We all play a role in this. So I appreciate your comments, and I hope that those out there, the stakeholders, understand the importance of this, and they share their willingness to help us and provide the information we need. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on this one? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to speak to it?
Yeah, just Mr. Mayor, on your comment there regarding the need for information from other agencies. I think the request in here is from agencies that receive funding from the city. So for the most part, and while we may not govern them directly, certainly we've got levers at our disposal to make sure that they comply with our requests for fairly basic information. So I would ask staff to impress upon them our need for this information.
Great. Any other comments on this? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Agenda item 8.3. I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Dufour. Whereas over the last several years, more citizens across Canada have become increasingly addicted to opioids, leading to what can, by all definitions, be described as an epidemic. And whereas Canadian municipalities like Sault Ste. Marie have experienced the devastating effects of opioid addiction. And whereas Sault Ste. Marie has seen rise in the toll taken on citizens, including a significant rise in opioid-related deaths. And whereas Canadian municipalities, including Sault Ste. Marie, have spent millions and millions of dollars, including but not limited to a dramatic increase in emergency ambulance and fire service calls to respond to opioid-related overdoses, a dramatic increase in policing associated with crime related to opioid abuse and addiction, and an escalation in homelessness as a result of this crisis, and more individuals having to undergo methadone treatment for their addiction. And whereas for years, drug companies that manufactured prescription opioids participated in an extensive marketing campaign to expand the market for opioids and their own market share, garnering billions of dollars of profits from this effort for both manufacturers and distributors of these drugs. And whereas in June of 2020, the city of Grande Prairie, Alberta, filed a $10 billion class action lawsuit against opioid manufacturers and distributors that seeks to recoup municipal costs associated with the opioid crisis on behalf of Canadian municipalities. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council directs the City of Sault Ste. Marie's legal department to explore the possibility of the City of Sault Ste. Marie formally joining this class action lawsuit, the benefits and or risks of same, and to report back to City Council with its findings in this regard.
Okay, Councillor Gardy, it's up to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I doubt that there's a community in this country from coast to coast to coast that have been unscathed by the opioid epidemic. Municipalities across the country have spent billions dealing with the tragic impacts of this epidemic. And I'd encourage city councils across the country to support the efforts of Grand Prairie when the time is right, to the degree that they can. I will defer to the motion before us for any other of my comments. Thanks.
Okay, Councilor Bruni, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to the mover or the seconder regarding to go after the manufacturers and the distributors. Can you explain to me distributors? Would this be doctors?
So shall I proceed, Mr. Mayor? Do you want to?
It's your motion, Councilor Gardy. Yeah.
So the class action lawsuit filed by Grand Prairie on behalf of all of the Canadian municipalities seeks to recoup costs from those who manufactured and distributed drugs. I do not believe that doctors were named in that suit, though I stand to be corrected. So my answer to your question, Mr. Bruni, is not doctors at this point.
Yeah, you're not intending, Councilor Gardy, that can't. Let me just be
That
clear.
is not my contention, nor do I believe it's the lawsuit.
So to Councilor Bruni, this is requesting a report back from staff, and because it's a legal matter, that's the route we want to take is make sure we get staff's advice on this for certain before we make a decision. So what the city solicitor would do is give council an outline of the class action, what the class action involves, what the consequences of joining it would be, and then you can make that decision based on the fullness of a legal opinion you get from the city solicitor. But this is a class action that exists. A municipality in the province of Ontario, as I understand, has joined it. So we'll look at that. The city solicitor will consider that and be back to us with the staff's opinion on advice on it. And you vote on that.
Thank you. And thank you to Councilor Gardy.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this resolution? We'll have further discussion on this hopefully at the September meeting. And if not the September meeting, I'm sure the October meeting. So all in favor? Motion is carried.
Bring us to bylaws. So I have a motion by Councillors Hilsinger and Christian, resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date August 9, 2021, save and accept bylaws 2021-154, 2021-156, and 2021-165 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
A motion by Councillors Hilsinger and Christian, resolved that bylaw 2021-154, 540 Albert East, 165 and 177 Brock Street. Resolved that bylaw 2021-154 being a bylaw to deem not registered for purposes of subdivision control certain lots in the Hughes B subdivision pursuant to section 50 sub 4 of the Planning Act be passed in open council this 9th day of August 2021.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And a motion by Councillors Hilsinger and Christian, resolved that bylaw 2021-156 being a bylaw to declare the city-owned property legally described as long legal description, being part civic 148 Daisy Road as surplus to the city needs, and to authorize disposition of the said property to the Sault Ste. Marie Housing Corporation or as otherwise directed be passed in open council this 9th day of August 2021.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'm having a bit of a lag with the casting, so I will catch up with that one manually rather than make you wait. And item 11.1.12 is bylaw 2021-165. The motion by Councillors Hilsinger and Christian resolved that bylaw 2021-165, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement between the city and Tombari Electric Limited for the LED lighting upgrades in the arena bowls and seating areas at the John Rhodes Community Centre be passed in open council this 9th day of August 2021.
All in favor? Motion carried.
And I have a motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Christian, resolved that this council move into closed session to discuss 2 items concerning the disposition of land. Further be it resolved that should the said closed session be adjourned, the council may reconvene in closed session. To further
All in
discuss
favor?
the same.
Carried. Thank you, Council. We will see you in closed.